involving the sheriff's department for the,
Brandon Brunt.
yes, Brandon's lawsuit for overtime. I'm assuming you were involved, Jeremy?
Yep.
Would you like to chime in and explain that, please?
Yeah, when the lawsuit was under these federal and state statutes, and we thought they had a really weak case, but the law is stacked against you as an employer in those. If they win, basically it works down to, if they win $1, we gotta pay their attorney's fees in full. They just, the chances of them winning $1 are pretty high, actually. So, we ended up settling, I don't know, we settled for $30,000 to go to the employees themselves. We did not, at that point, we had agreed to kind of argue or negotiate what the plaintiffs would get and what the attorneys would get separately. We were able to settle the employee portion of it. We were not able to settle the attorney fee portion of it that day in mediation when we were in Little Rock. We agreed that we would try for a few weeks to negotiate the attorney's fees. They wouldn't even send us a fee petition showing what their hours were, who worked them, and what they did. They just gave us this spreadsheet of, they had 8 different lawyers working on it in one day. Anyway, it was the amount they were asking is way too high.
Well, my understanding is the judge has now asked for that information and he's going to review it. Is that the case?
Yeah, what we agreed on is that if we couldn't settle it within a couple of weeks after we left mediation, that they would file a petition with the judge, for the judge to make a determination what the fees are, which they've done. And we responded to that. And so we're waiting on the judge to tell us when he's going to hear it, and who knows when that's going to be with the way things are right now. Basically, they filed a petition. We've said we think that it's too high.
So right now, the only thing we're going to look at is paying the settlement amount of $30,000 to, how many employees were involved with that? Do you remember?
12, I believe.
12?
I think that's right.
And it's based on, some of them get more than others?
Yeah, it's actually itemized in the settlement agreement. It's each of them's itemized amount that's in there. And so, yes, that's what we need to appropriate is to go ahead and make that payment. And then we need to, the attorney's fees will just happen how it happens.
Well, and here's the breakdown on it.
Were these all employees of Mississippi County?
Yes, they were either sheriff's deputies or jailers, all of them. And they're all ex-employees, none of them are still employees.
I have a question on consistency.
Rick, how was the amount that each one got determined?
How many hours they will claim?
Yeah, that was what it was. And how many hours they claimed that they worked that they were not paid for.
So how was it determined? They just claimed that and we wrote a check for it?
No, we gave them.
I can't hear you way up there. You're going through.
Yeah, I'm not close.
Please, step back.
I didn't know how we were all gonna sit. I just came here and sit.
Come sit in his lap.
I want to know how you determined the amount that they got. They just said, I worked 20 hours, you paid them for 20, or I want to know how you determined it.
How did you determine what each one of them got? I mean,
We
do we just have to take their word for it or what?
No, we gave them, well, that was a lot of our argument is, with the jailers, it broke down pretty easy. They said they came in 15 minutes early every day to find out who was being unruly, who they needed to watch out for, when they were, just kind of a debriefing before they started work. And then they stayed 15 minutes late to do the debriefing for the next group. So it added up to 30 minutes a day per employee for the jailers. That one was pretty easy as far as the way they
So you basically took their word for it,
On the 30 minutes, yeah,
period.
as far as the, yeah, I mean, that was, if the jury believed that, and even if the jury didn't believe it and said, you know what, we don't believe them, we think it was more like maybe 5 minutes a day, and they gave them 5 minutes a day, we're still stuck for all the attorney's fees. The further we went along in trial, the higher the attorney's fees go.
Who, and I just have some questions I want answered. I know that you know all this stuff, you don't think it's trite. It's not trite to me.
No, it's not right.
Who represented this?
Mainly Jason Owens, that used to work with Mike Rainwater. I worked along with him, but he was the lead lawyer.
Jason Owens. Okay.
Is he with the Arkansas Association of Counties anymore?
No, he's got his own law firm in Conway now.
That's what I thought.
I don't think he never worked for the AAC. He worked for Rainwater and them, and then the AAC kind of took it in-house now, but they still farm a lot of stuff out to Jason.
So has he been on it the whole time?
I did the initial legwork, but when it got down to,
The arbitrator?
yeah, when it got down to taking depositions and all that, I got him involved.
I don't know of any law enforcement agency, sheriff's department, little towns, big towns, cities, whatever, that do not ask their deputies, police officers to come in 15, 20, 30 minutes early to report, get a report.
Yeah.
Why is this such a big deal now? Why are we paying overtime for it? Or in the future, or are they just expected to show up at 9 o'clock, get in their car and not worry about what happened up till 9 o'clock?
Well,
Yes or no?
the argument is that if they work 8.5 hours, they're supposed to be paid for 8.5 hours, whether it's, I mean, it's not 8, it's 8.5. If they're telling the truth, I mean, there's not a time clock, so it's gonna be up to a jury to decide whether they believe them or not. And that's kind of a coin toss, whether the jury
Okay, that
would or not.
wasn't, you're dancing around my question.
Not trying to.
Yeah, you do a good job of it, like most attorneys. People come in 15 minutes early to get a report from what
Right.
happened that night,
Right,
or what happened on the highways.
yeah.
That's customary. There's nothing that's ever been said about that in the last,
Yeah.
to the Ice Age. Why are we now paying them for that 15 minutes?
There is a statute that says if you work 15 minutes, you get paid for it.
Let me
You have
interject,
to-
let me interject something in my show. Blythe ran into this when I was a captain there. What we had to do was we looked at them and said, okay, we're gonna require you to come in 15 minutes early. You work a 12-hour shift, you're gonna get a 1 hour paid lunch break. That way, they're supposed to take that 30 minutes out during that hour, and we didn't have to pay them the overtime. They were supposed to be able to go home, eat lunch, and they weren't to be called unless there was an emergency. And then they got the 15 minutes that they came in early. Federal courts ruled that we had to do that. You can't make them come in 15 minutes early for a report anymore without allowing some way of compensation. With our dispatchers, we actually made them come in the 15 minutes early, but we looked at them and said, you will take a 1 hour lunch break. It is unpaid. You will leave the building and not come back for 1 hour. We couldn't do that with police officers because they're still carrying a radio and they've still got a car. So we paid their lunch break. That was the ruling that we got from U.S. Department of Labor, because we did have somebody report us to the Labor Board for not paying them for that time. This law firm that is filing these suits is doing this all across the state. I think almost every one of them is settling out of court because they know if they get into court, they're gonna lose and they're gonna end up paying a big attorney bill on the other side. I don't like this. but that doesn't matter. I know that we're probably stuck with it. Just like we're gonna be stuck with paying their attorney bills. But it's a situation that happened back in 2003 for Blythe. Obviously, the sheriff's department didn't get caught till this year. And what they told us when they did all this to us, they said we can go back for 2 years if it was not done on purpose. If it was done on purpose, we'd go back 3. Well, we didn't realize we were violating it, so they went back 2 years. We ended up paying out almost $50,000 to 9 dispatchers. And they made us correct the police department because no officer filed a labor complaint. It was just dispatchers on us. But they came in and when they were looking at it, they investigated, all told us how we could fix it. Now, any other questions? I'll let him handle it.
It's not gonna do any good to ask them.
Well,
Well, it all goes back to, I don't know all the circumstances, but you can take a disgruntled employee or a disgruntled ex-employee, anybody can file a lawsuit. And that's kind of where we are.
I tell people when I teach a concealed carry class, you can be sued for anything or nothing at all for $175.
This happened to Game and Fish too, the same thing. And we settled too, or the Game and Fish settled, I'm no longer Game and Fish. But, and the Game and Fish had an attorney that's still on staff that won a lawsuit against the Corps of Engineers in United States Supreme Court, so he knew his business. But the Game and Fish still paid out this stuff, a large sum to several employees. And after that lawsuit, now, because there's not a time clock for a game warden. So now what they have to do, they keep a logbook, and they do timesheets, and they also do radio logs, and all that has to match. So, because when a game warden checks 10-8 in the truck, he's at work. Same thing with the deputy. When he checks 10-8 from his house, he's at work, So, in that way, and you can't be sitting on top of them and see when they check 10-8, make sure they're working. They can go out to their car, check 10-8, go back in the house, But game trucks has GPS, you can tell where they are all the time too. But that would be a suggestion, I would think, logbooks, timesheets, and radio logs, they all gotta match, and look at them every 3 months.
Yeah,
And you could prevent this in the future.
You look at them every 2 weeks.
Well, we looked at ours, they were turned in every 2 weeks, but we went back and signed off on them every quarter. Went back and inspected them and made sure they matched.
And each of the employees, if they wanted to claim overtime, all they had to do is put on their time sheet, and from what we saw, the ones that did got paid.
So are these guys suggesting that they did not put time down, but they worked it?
That was their claim.
They
were told not to, they were told they weren't allowed to, mainly the deputies.
Yeah.
But they were told that they were not allowed to put down their overtime, and so they didn't.
Well, they didn't get near enough money, because I could have got a lot more. I'm sorry, that's a horrible system.
It is. The law on that is stacked against the employer terribly, and it is a horrible system, I agree.
So that's the nature of the beast. Once you sign in, from then on, it's just,
But with the deputies, it wouldn't be that hard to fix. Give them a time clock, but with the jailers. But with the deputies, somebody calls them there at their house and they say, okay, 10-8, like you said, and then they're on the job. That's a lot harder to keep up with.
That would be the way to do it. Well, you can't put them on salary.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, even with salaried employees now, if
Yeah.
they work over the 40 hours,
Yeah,
you're
that's right.
technically supposed to pay them.
But that's something I don't understand with the deputies. And Rick's and me went back and forth, not back and forth, but we discussed this before. See, Game and Fish, if you're a supervisor, you're exempt from overtime or from comp time. And sergeants and above are exempt. And I don't know why it's not the same case with the sheriff's office. They're under the same retirement as we are, and I would think it would be. If you're a sergeant and above in the Game and Fish, you cannot earn comp time, you cannot get paid overtime. They can work you as many hours as you want. And this one officer was a sergeant that's claiming they got the most money.
Probably no one's ever thought about it.
Well, that's gonna be their problem, no one has thought about it, because at Live, they looked at us and said the only one that was exempt was the chief. And now they can make, and they could put the assistant chief as exempt, because they don't, their description was that they don't physically do the job of a street officer. They are strictly managed.
Here you go again. It's how you write your job description.
That's true.
We have been lax in writing those for our benefit as well as the employees.
But the problem is, it doesn't matter how we write it on the deputies, they're still gonna get overtime. I think that Bubba's suggestion, a log in the car, if we can't do a time clock with them. At the jail, I think we should look at a time clock. The jailers walk in, they punch in. And I'll suggest this to the sheriff, or we will suggest to him that he find some way for them to clock in. Like what Michael was talking about, they clock in on their cell phones. Their GPS is going to tell us if the car is moving. So they can't be sitting at home clocked in, because we can look at GPS and see where they're at. I think the big thing here today is we have to decide, do we want to send this over to finance for them to appropriate the money to settle this lawsuit and get it off our hands?
You're talking about the finance committee?
Yes, sir, finance committee. We'd have to send this to finance, allow them to take care of it.
Rick, one more comment. When we start talking about time clocks at the jail, we probably need to look at that at the landfill and the road department also, because those guys just turn in a time card.
Well, I agree with you, but here was the discussion. Your road grader operators at the landfill, they have a truck. When they park the road grader, they drive home. They go from home to the road grader. So my suggestion there was, number one, put GPS on the pickup trucks. We got them on the road graders. And then we could do either a time clock system on a cell phone, or, as Bubba said, a log where they have to log in and call the office and say, hey, I'm headed to my road grader.
We don't need them punching in when they drive into work.
There's all kind of technology
Well,
that can get it done.
I agree with you, but they're driving a company vehicle home.
So let them, that's ridiculous, Rick.
I'm agreeing
yeah.
with Justice Nelson on this, so we pay them
And
to
I don't know
drive to
how they're
work.
doing that. I don't know if they're considering them going to work when they get in the truck or when they get in the road grader. But I agree with you. We don't need to be paying them to drive to work.
Well, that's what
We
you're
need
doing.
to find
If
out,
that's
we
what
need
you
to find
want.
out what they're doing. You know,
If when they get in that truck, which is what you said,
well, okay, if we all we have them do is when they get in the road grader, then they log the time that they start the road grader, and the GPS will tell us if they're moving.
I could go along with that, but I can't go
Okay.
along with the
Well, and
logging in the truck to go to work.
I'm just trying to figure it out. I have not talked to the judge or anybody at the landfill about how they do, or the road department, how they do that. Landfill, I know they drive out there, they punch in.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the middle of the landfill or the road department. I go for police and fire. I deal with them right now, so. But, you know, you're right. We're gonna have to get a policy for everybody.
Well, and you could even do that with the office staff too at the jail. I mean,
Yes, I'm not arguing that. You could do, everybody at the jail could have a time clock. Every deputy would have a log, whether they log in their car and they log in on the radio and their GPS to start moving. The road department, I'm gonna let them figure that, I'm gonna let the chairman of the road department figure that one out.
I'm sure he appreciates that.
I'm just saying, Neil's right, I agree with him, we should put time clocks in for people that go to the office to start working. How we're gonna do it with people that don't go to the office, that's gonna be somebody else's problem.
I mean, I think it don't put it on.
Well, there's at least 10 road grader operators. And I'm assuming some days they may go to the office first. But now, like, if your deputies, every deputy, when he sits down in the car, technically, he is now on duty. Because if he sees someone violate the law on the way to work, he's supposed to stop them. They're in a little bit different circumstance than what the road grader operator is. That's why you can actually work them in a 28-day period. You can work them 86 hours without paying them overtime. That's the crazy one. Okay. Main thing we're worried about today is, do we send this to finance so that they can let finance hash out how they're gonna pay for this? What do you wanna do?
Make a motion, we move this $30,000 settlement fee to finance for appropriation and moving to the full court for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does anyone have anything else to come before the police and fire committee right now?
Jeremy, any idea when we might have a settlement fee? I mean, this isn't the end of this, and we're gonna owe those attorneys some dollars.
Yep.
Could be 10,000, could be 50,000, but any idea when?
No, because the way the court system is right now, I mean, nobody's having court. We just
hadn't
gotta
thought
wait on
about
a
that.
judge to give us a date.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go to court on the attorneys?
Yes.
We're not gonna just,
They came in my opinion, at least double what would be fair. There's no negotiating. That's where we're at.
Anything else?
they can't get any more for representing themselves though, right? I mean, they can't log in on time or nothing.
They're gonna try. I guarantee you they try.
I guess
But no,
that
that shouldn't happen.
was, I guess that was a dumb question.
Yeah, it shouldn't happen, but I wouldn't.
Time
Well, they
clocks in
gotta
the jail would have
represent
definitely
themselves.
fixed this, wouldn't it, Jeremy?
Oh, and for the jailers, yes.
For the jailers.
The
Time
deputies
clocks in the
would be-
jail would have fixed this.
Yeah, the deputies would be a lot more difficult. You would have to trust them to, like Ricky was saying, log in, like something in their vehicle where they log in and log out.
Well, like I said, we kept a logbook that showed our start time, or our
Yeah.
quitting time.
Yeah.
Anytime we, went 10-7, which is out of service, and something, because you may start out at 4 o'clock in the morning, 10-8, working duck hunters, and you may go home at 10 o'clock and, take a nap till 2 and get back out and work like that evening. So there would be a lot of start and stop times in ours, and you log all that down and write it, and you write down exactly what you did that day too. I mean, you kept the log, and then you had a radio log, and radio log's gotta be kept for 3 years. You got a logbook, a radio log, and a timesheet, and all three of those gotta match. And if you're cheating, it's gonna be hard to keep them matching.
Plus, you've always got the option of, when you go on duty, notify the dispatcher. If they can't keep the log in the car, the dispatcher can keep the log.
Well, they keep a log. That radio log's gotta be kept for 3 years by law.
Actually, most of them now are kept almost indefinitely because they're all computer-aided dispatch. So every log is in there. The problem is, and I've worked with SOMs, I'm gonna tell you right now, looking something up in it's next to impossible to find. But the logbook in the car would make it a whole lot easier to find that stuff. And you can always go back and check their GPS also. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned.